Welcome you guys. We're going to do some ranking of the last 15 eyeshadow palettes that I've tried. I've been trying to do this each quarter of the year, and then I want to do a final ranking at the end of the year like I did for 2022, where I did try 72 eyeshadow palettes. This year, I don't know if I'll have tried that many, but it's entirely possible. I really just couldn't wait till the end of the quarter. I've tried some really good palettes recently, and I wanted to do a ranking from worst to best. And 15 just seemed like not an even number, not even a round number, just a good solid multiple of 5 that I could land on that was digestible. I do not keep track of the eyeshadow palettes as I'm going. I'm just going to be talking about them, but I will be throwing up a number probably somewhere on the screen so that you guys can see kind of what order they go into. I have had a blaring migraine for 2 days. I think it's hereditary. My grandmother used to get them. My great-grandmother used to get them. I even think my mom used to get them. They are severely debilitating. I'm just now getting to an age where they're impacting me. I've never had them before, but boy, they get to my head, they get to my stomach, they go into my shoulders. It's like I get nauseous. Anyway, I haven't really had the energy to film until now. It's pretty late. Even though I feel like I'm all glammed up, but I really wanted to do this video because I got the energy for the first time in a couple of days. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you are new here, I do hope you guys consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this kind of video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. Now let's start at the bottom. So coming in at last place was a quad from LA Girl. This one is called Feel Good. I'm pretty sure these launched in January. It could have been February. I'm not entirely certain. I've had it since then. I used it once and then I kind of just left it alone. It really just didn't impress me overall. Part of the problem with this was this shade doesn't do anything for me. It is a brightening shade, so I think that it's nice for some people who like to highlight or use it for their inner corner, or even if they don't like a shimmer on the lid, they can use this shade, but I don't use it. I could have managed the palette without it by using this one like all over and then dragging this one even in the outer corner. It is a shimmer, but that's fine. That's okay. I don't mind a shimmer in the outer corner. It's just that my favorite shimmer shade, which is this one, is just a topper, and every time that happens, you will always see me rank the palette a little bit lower. It didn't have a whole lot of payoff. I was hoping that it had more because it's such a beautiful color. This is a nice matte though. I mean, it's on the lighter side. It doesn't have a huge amount of pigmentation, but it's still nice. This one here is actually a really nice shade. It's not light reflecting or anything, but it is a nice little satiny shimmer. But unfortunately, it's the same look every single time and it's not the greatest quality. This shade is a super bummer. This one is useless. This was kind of a letdown. I did try one other, I think, LA Girl palette this year, maybe the end of last year, because I thought their shimmer formula was knocked up a notch, but I don't know. This was just okay. It wasn't my favorite. It's really probably one that I wouldn't need to keep in my collection. I think I will end up decluttering this by year's end. Now let's move to the other end of the spectrum. So the next one that I have is a quad from Tom Ford. I literally don't know why I keep buying the Tom Ford quads. This one is the one in Leopard Sun. I don't believe you can get this anymore on Tom Ford's website or Sephora. It is one that I think you can only get like at Nordstrom, Neiman Marcus maybe. It still sells it. I did get this at the cosmetics company, so I did get it at a discounted price. I keep wanting to love Tom Ford shadows. The problem is they get these beautiful color stories that just really draw me in. They're so gorgeous. Like, I love pairing these two kinds of shades together because I really like a fiery look. Honestly, the shimmer wasn't half bad. Like, it does definitely kind of feel like a topper. It's a really thin shimmer, and that's okay. This palette though is so lightly pigmented. It just really didn't show up, like hardly at all. You'd think this shade right here would be really good for deepening, and it just isn't overly pigmented. It kind of overblends. I do like this shade like a little bit better. These three in particular are really nice. This one's just very lightly pigmented, and I keep expecting that the Tom Ford quads are going to be pigmented, but they're really not. Unfortunately. And so when you get these for $90, so lightly pigmented and one shimmer that's just, it's okay. It's not the greatest. It's kind of a letdown. So I think at this point in my makeup journey, I'm probably done with the Tom Ford quads. I know that some people are collectors. I do want to try the cream formula. I probably won't find that pigmented enough, but I cannot see $90 really being worth it for something like this because the pigment just isn't there. Next up, let's talk about a launch. I think this launched in October. This was the Troublemaker palette from ColourPop. I bought this right on launch day or like second day, something like that. And I held on to it for the longest time and didn't try it. If you guys have ever seen me talk about eyeshadows or just color stories in general, I'm just not a huge fan of cool tone shadows the way that a lot of people are. And so you might think, why did you pick this up? I really wanted to try what I think of like as a trusted formula on cool tone shadows to see if I liked them. And unfortunately, I just don't. The mattes in this palette looked muddy. They just were really patchy. I think that I really enjoyed some of these shades though. They are really tremendous. So for example, this shade right here is so beautiful. This one reminds me of one in like the ABH Nouveau palette. It just has this like interesting like duochrome shift. So it's like a darker shade, and then when you start to like blend it out, it's almost like maroon. And the Nouveau palette from ABH has one that's identical to this, very, very similar shade. It's beautiful. I was wearing the shade like all over. I wasn't wearing it as like a shimmer necessarily because this is a shimmer. And you know, they do formulate the shimmers pretty bomb in this palette. The shimmers are really gorgeous. I can't hate on the shimmers. It was really just the mattes that were super, super patchy for me. And I kept trying to play with it, thinking, okay, I'm gonna pull this one in because this is like a cool toned kind of mauve shade that I would really like. But it was giving me the same muddy look. I really enjoyed the shimmers. This Super Shock though was kind of like on the lighter side. It wasn't as good as this one right here. And so it wasn't as fun to play with. See, it's just kind of on the lighter side. So didn't enjoy this shade, really enjoyed some of these shimmers. Super, super fun, just didn't really like the mattes. And I'm just not a fan of the cool tones. Coming up next is one of the Cutie palettes from Nabla. This one is the Analogue palette. I have several of the other ones from the Cutie palette collection, and I did try them for the first time last year, and I wanted to get my hands on the rest of them because I really did like the formula, and I'm a really big fan of like Nabla shimmers in general. I think they're pretty good. This one, unfortunately, the mattes were really, really patchy. I got especially a difficult time with this one right here, and it didn't matter if I like primed my eyes or didn't prime my eyes, which powder I set it with, I kept getting patchiness out of this one right here. I do really like this though. Like this kind of duochrome orange shimmer is to die for. Like I love this kind of shade on my lid, and even this one here, this goldy or kind of champagne-y one in 35mm, it's also very beautiful, very buttery. Nabla shadows are kind of on the thinner side, so they're not chunky or difficult to work with, and they look really nice on the lid. I like these shades. It was just that, you know, I really wanted to build like off of the mattes, the darker mattes. I mean, these two are almost identical when they get to the eye, so that was kind of frustrating. Even this shade right here, which is a shimmer, is kind of an interesting shade. I don't think it has any like real light reflection. It's just a really soft kind of tacky shimmer formula. It does have like light sparkles in it. I mean, overall the color story is really, really pretty and right up my alley, and these two shimmers really make this palette like usable for me. It's just the mattes were not very good, and so that's why that palette is where it is. But I think overall though, I'm still really a fan of Nabla shadows. The next one that I have, I also picked up at the cosmetic company, so pretty sure you cannot get this anymore. This is the Luxe Eye Cheek palette from Bobbi Brown. I keep buying these, you guys, like even the limited edition ones that keep coming out, even though they're really simple color stories, and you know, you get this giant like thing that could be presumed as kind of a highlighter in the middle, and they are pretty expensive. But there is something about the way Bobbi Brown formulates some of their shimmers, and it's not for like an everyday look. It might not be for everybody, but it's nice to have in my collection, and it's this one right here. Bobbi Brown's most recent limited edition one that I think came out for like Lunar New Year at the beginning of this year or like the end of last year has very similar like shimmer shades, and they're glitter shades though. They're on the thinner side, but guys, they're just so beautiful. It's like these tiny sparkles, and it's just so gorgeous. I keep falling in love with this formulation over and over again. These are all like satins or shimmers in here, so you don't get a super pigmented look. I just never mind. it's always this one that does it for me. It's so light reflecting and so beautiful. I just kind of get goo goo gaga over it. So that's why I keep spending my money on it. This highlighter thing, I mean, you could use this for your eyes too, but it's also meant for cheek as well. It's like a duochrome. It's like a shift of like pink and green. I also really do like that. So yeah, the packaging is just always super fun on all of these. Super, super cool. Yes, it's kind of overpriced, and yes, these aren't like overly pigmented shades. Like in general, they don't have a whole lot of pigment. I don't care. I usually get these for the fun glittery shades. So I do like this. It's just kind of a limiting palette overall. The next one really, really surprised me. This is a drugstore palette from J.Cat. This is also a recent release. This one is called Traffic Night Bokeh. They came out with 2 of these, so I picked up one of the more, I think, like purpley color stories. You guys, I had never tried J.Cat's eyeshadow formula before. Oh my goodness. The mattes are super pigmented. I have to tell you, even when I was like messing with this, as pigmented as they are, I was even going, oops, I overcommitted, because some of the shades are just super, super pigmented, and they're thick too. Like they don't overblend, they don't get patchy. Really, really good formula on the mattes. Really, really surprised me. But the shimmer formula is to die for. It's on the chunkier side, but super light reflecting, and every one of them is gorgeous. So I kept reaching for this palette for the shimmer formula. You guys see that? So it's really, really chunky, but like super delicious. Like once you rub it into the eye, like look at that. And they're all like that. There's no inconsistencies in these shimmers. They're all this chunky, super reflective, super pigmented shimmer or metallic formula even. So honestly, if you guys were ever thinking of picking up a palette from J.Cat but hadn't tried it, if they formulate all their palettes like this, it's super, super good. I think the reason I put this where it is, because it's kind of on the lower end, is the color story, and that's really it. Just a really bright, kind of fun color story. And I was wearing this for every day, but I was kind of dipping into some of the more neutral shades and kind of like, you know, diffusing some of the colors out so I could get away with it. But the reason that I can't really reach for it all the time is because it's just not an everyday work palette. So yeah, some of these colors are just overly vibrant, but the quality on it is so, so good. You do have to like the chunky shimmers though, because they're all really like that. I could just keep swatching this. Like I just even have fun swatching this palette. So yeah, pretty affordable palette. J.Cat does a really good job with their formulations. The next one also really surprised me. This is one of the new releases from Rare Beauty. This one is in the color story Give Yourself Grace. I didn't think that it was very different than one of her palettes that she launched before, like previously. It looked really, really similar, and I had that palette, but I ended up decluttering it because I didn't think the quality was that good. And you do get this really large pressed glitter. But you guys, the pigmentation on this was so good. The shadows, honestly, they like blended in together really nicely. Every time I played with this, it was like the looks were just really everyday, but also like nicely pigmented. I don't know, something about the quality was different in this one, or at least it seemed that way to me than her previous ones. The shimmer formula is definitely like on the lighter side, but it's also not bad. Like they're very thin, they're very buttery, they do have some light reflection to them. And even though there's this giant pressed glitter, you guys, this pressed glitter is so bomb. I'm not really into pressed glitters, but look at this. It sticks together. There's not really a lot of fallout. I have worn this pressed glitter so many times on my eyes, and it has always been just so, so beautiful. So yeah, the pigmentation and the mattes were there. The shimmer formula was nice. The glitter was awesome. Honestly, I think even if you're not a huge glitter fan, like you would really, really like this. This really surprised me. I quite enjoyed this. Okay, the next one is not a new release. This is the Escape Pod palette from Kaleidos. I recently picked this up because I had been eyeing it for so, so long, and I really do like Kaleidos' formula. I was a little bit disappointed with this palette. There are 3 shades, 3 shimmers in here that are not the same. They're like toppers, and the other 3 aren't. So I think it's this one, I want to say this one. There are 3 of them. Let me kind of show you. Like one of these greens is just on the lighter side. It doesn't swatch as well as the other one. It just comes out lighter on the eyes. I think this purple one here is kind of like a topper. Yeah, see, the purple one is like much thinner. If you're into the topper shades, like it's okay, but yeah, they're just, they don't have as much pigmentation. And then you take like this green, which I did swatch already, and like you put it on, it's just different. Here's another one that's really pigmented. So there are 3 that are really good, and then 1, 2, 3 that are on the lighter side. So it's like this one, and this one are nice, and this one, and that one aren't. They're just a little bit different. And then I struggled with the color story just a little bit. I know that it's like a brighter palette. I know that you have to like kind of look at this and have a little bit of creativity, but man, I was having a hard time like pairing some of these shades together. I really did find that it was kind of an interesting color story. You have one blue, just one blue, and I didn't know what the heck to pair it with. Unless I just did an all like blue look and like smoked it out. I was just having a really difficult time. Same thing with like the brown shade in there. So yeah, the color story was a little bit off for me by the time I got it here and was started to play with it, and then disappointed in like 3 of the shimmer shades out of like 6 of them. Were just kind of on the lighter side. The matte formula is really good. It's just that I struggled with those couple of things. The next one that I have is from Beauty Bay. This is the Dark Fantasy palette. I got this also when it launched, probably October. A lot of these palettes have been kind of like sitting here and I haven't. I tested them once and then just like set them aside. So I finally got around to testing them. This is a really dark and grungy color story, and I do not reach for all of the matte shades. It's not I have trouble figuring out what to pair them with. I actually think they curated this really well. Like 2 mattes here you can pair, these 2 you can pair. You could pair with that grungy kind of green, these 2 that you could put together, this deep blue, you could, I don't know. It makes sense if you like a dark color story. I don't typically on an everyday basis, but these shimmers, they're bomb. They're like thin and super light reflecting, just massively pigmented. Oh, they're literally buttery delightfulness. There's some fun colors in here, but then there's also like your everyday shimmers too. Like this purple one, to die for. And there's also like this blue shimmer in here. Now my fingers have stuff all over them. And there's like this one, this deep like purpley gun. Look at that. This one's on the lighter side, but look, this is so gorgeous. So the shimmers in here are fantastic. I kept reaching for this palette for the shimmers. Like, I don't know if you can see all my finger imprints and all the shimmers, but I was like, I need to try every single one. And so while I wasn't grabbing for the mattes, even though the mattes, super blendable, oh my gosh, highly pigmented, they still were like really easy to work with. It was just that the shimmers, oh yeah. So really enjoyed this. Again, kind of a limiting palette. It's more of like a companion palette for me, but it's still really good quality. The next one I have is from an indie brand called Eunique Beauty out of the UK. I have included their other palettes that I've tried in like some of my other ranking videos, but I didn't get to this one. Like, it takes me a while, I think, to kind of finally test them out the way that I want to. This one was the Volume 1, the Japan palette. I have mentioned that I love these little palettes. I think the quality on them is so good. I think that they're like perfectly curated, that they have 3 mattes to 3 shimmers, and I've said this in many of my ranking videos, that that's something that I really like. When you have like a 6-pan or a quad or something like that, that you have an even ratio, that you can build depth with it and still get a really nice looking shimmer, like 1 light shimmer, 1 dark shimmer. And all of their little 6 pans that are like this are like even ratios, and I love it. And then you get a pretty light shimmer, a pretty dark shimmer. You can really build depth with the mattes. So good. Quality is great. I've even overcommitted again with some of these mattes because they're so pigmented. But for whatever reason, I was a little bit disappointed in the mattes in here. And that for whatever reason, like these 2 shades just, they look like they would go well together. When I got them to the eyes, they just didn't look right. Like, something about them, they didn't blend together perfectly. And I did not find that with their other 6-pan palettes. So I think this one was probably my least favorite between the 3 that I had. Even though these are probably my favorite shimmers, they're my least favorite matte. Let me swatch these shimmers for you. You guys, this one right here is just, it's delectable. It's chunky, but it's this multi-chromy goodness. It's so thin and light reflecting. I mean, it is chunky, but like, it blends out thin. And then if you want something like kind of chunky on the eyes, this red one is like, it's so pigmented. I wonder if I could just keep wrapping it around my hand. And then this goldy brown, oh, they're honestly like just butter, you guys. And just again, just really, really pigmented. Oh, can I keep going? So good. These are just great quality shimmers. Honestly, it was just those two mattes, for whatever reason they didn't blend together very well, but still so worth it. The next one that I have is just a little teeny tiny one from Pat McGrath. This is her mini eyeshadow palette in Sublime Smoke. Was really impressed with the quality of this, honestly. These little tiny pans, they're still big enough to get my fat fingers in. Like, I really did enjoy this because I like to use my finger for shimmers most of the time. And I kind of thought, oh, you know, it's kind of a high price point for teeny tiny little shadows. But I think Viseart's pretty similar. And I think they were pretty similar in price. I think Viseart now retails for about $29 for their little pans. They're like these 6 pans and they're about this size. I just love the curation of this. And honestly, the matte quality was so good. It just really surprised me. They blended together so nicely. And I liked that you had like a warm tone, 2 cool tone shadows. And I was always like transition, crease, outer corner. I know I got the same look pretty much every single time I used it, but the quality was so good. And I loved that it had an even ratio. Let me just swatch the shimmers. They're just really pigmented. They're so smooth. They're not like special shades or anything from Pat McGrath. And I do think, I'm actually not sure if these are like repeat shades. I think one of her other ones was like repeat shades. This one might have been, but I don't think I have any of these shades. Most of the ones that I have from Pat McGrath are all like pink, and I only really have like two palettes from Pat. No, I have 3 because I have 1 holiday collection. But yeah, they just blended together so nicely. There was no patchiness issues. They looked cohesive and easy to blend and didn't overblend. So I thought the quality on this was really good. Yeah, just an everyday smoky eye, and it was really good quality. You know what, now that I think about it, I did a video where I was like wearing that eyeshadow palette and someone was like, oh my gosh, what eyeshadow palette are you wearing? And it was that one. I remember that. So the next one that I have is from Glaminatrix Cosmetics. This is the Nearly Neutral palette. This one I think released a while ago, then went out of stock, then came back in stock. And then it took 90 days to get to me. I think I ordered it in February and it didn't arrive until sometime in the beginning of May, I wanna say. Yeah, I think so. And someone else said, oh my gosh, mine took like, I think 6 months, much longer, I don't know. The color story is an everyday color story for me. That's really what made me like gravitate towards this palette. I will give a gripe on, like a little bit of criticism on the mattes. Some of the mattes were a little bit patchy, I have to say. They didn't blend super nicely. I did make this green eye look one day and I was wearing it in one of my videos. So gorgeous. It was so good. So it's not all of the mattes, it's just some of them. And I feel like it was like some of these darker shades, like these two, sometimes they were coming out a little bit muddy, a little bit patchy. But these 2 green ones, oh my gosh, they were so good. But I love the shimmer formula in here. I think it's pretty much all the same. They all kind of like have sparkles in them. They're super light reflecting, but super sparkly. I would suggest with these that you use some sort of like glitter glue, because this one has a lot of sparkles and I get some fallout on it like throughout the day if I'm not using like a glitter glue. But these shimmers are delectable. They're all like buttery, soft goodness, indie shimmers. Yeah. And they're everyday and wearable. I hope the camera is like making them look as good as they really are on the eyes. I was getting like a good variety of different looks and then everyday wearable looks, but also I could amp it up. So it was nice. It was just that some of the mattes were a little bit patchy, and that's it. So it is really good quality. I don't actually know if this is like back in stock or not. It might just totally be out now. But if it's like back in stock, I will like list it in the description box. Definitely good enough for me to want to try like Glaminatrix formula, like a different palette from them. But I am just a little bit weary of some of the like darker matte shades. We are at the top 3 and the next 2 are from the same brand, and it honestly shocked the heck out of me. I have done multiple videos on my channel featuring these. I only have 2 of the 3 that I purchased. I actually think I picked up a 4th, but it hasn't arrived yet. These are the MAC Connect and Color eyeshadow palettes. These are fairly new releases. I think they came out with 3 color stories in the big version and then 4 in in the smaller 6-pan. So this was the 12-pan palette. This one was called Future Flame. I have talked about these several times on my channel. I don't know what the heck MAC has done with their matte formula, but it is so good. I originally picked this up not knowing what to think because I haven't tried a MAC eyeshadow formula, and I did mention this in probably 10 years, and the last time that I did, it was like a single potted shadow. I don't even remember how I felt about it, but this is so good. These mattes blend perfectly. They hold their pigmentation. They don't look like a muddy mess by the end of the day. They create these smoky, fiery goodness. The quality of these mattes is so good, and you couldn't tell just by looking at this palette. Like, it looks like it's an okay palette. It's just alright. Okay. I have color stories that are similar to this. I don't necessarily even think these swatch the best, but when you get them to the eyes, guys, if you're interested in seeing like what these looks come out to look like, check out my channel. I think I have like 3 videos on each of the palettes out there in trying new makeup. The way that these blend together, I'm telling you guys, it's like they're married. They were meant to be together. The eyeshadow looks that I created, so great. And the good thing about this is like, you can amp this up, but you can tone it down for an everyday look. I am gonna mention though, the shimmer formula is basically nonsense. They're not very good. They're not light reflecting. My hands are so dirty, I'm getting other swatches. They're very light. Yeah, just not light reflecting, just very light. They almost kind of look like muted mattes when you get them to the eyes. So I do not love this formula for the shimmer formula. But if you want an everyday like shimmer look that's not too light reflecting or just overdone because you do go to the office, these are great palettes to reach for. And I don't even mind that the shimmer formula is not good. Like, that's how good I think these mattes are, that I don't care that the shimmer formula is pretty boring because the quality on the mattes is so good. The next one that I have is also for MAC, the Connecting Color. This is one of their 6 pans. This one is embedded in Burgundy. I rated this one higher than the last one because it's a cool tone palette that stole my heart. There is something about these cool tones and the way they play together. They complement each other. Each of them show up on my eye. They blend out perfectly. This is a situation where cool tones that work really well, I think, do look good on me, where most of the time I think cool tones look terrible. This is the kind of cool tone color story that I get along with really well. These mattes are just rich. They're so rich. Ignore that finger. But they, oh God, they look so beautiful on the eyes. I love the way this is curated. This, like, again, this shimmer formula doesn't do much. It really doesn't, but whatever. Cool tone color story. I loved the look every single time. I mean, it's basically the same look over and over again, but I loved it every single time. It just looked so beautiful on me. It was cool tone that stole my heart, so it impressed me because I don't like cool tones. Let's get to the number 1 spot. This one is also from an indie brand. This is Bella Beauté Bar. This is the Star-Crossed Lovers palette. I was so excited to get this. This is just my kind of beautiful berry pinky tone color story. It is the one that I am wearing today. I am super impressed with this. I'm impressed all across the board. I like the color story. I think that it gives you an option to go many different routes. None of them look similar on the eyes. You can create like different eye looks that allow you to create depth every single time. Like, you have these deepening shades that are really nice. I've even dipped into this gray shade here, which I originally thought was kind of weird. But if you use it like on the lower lid on the outer corner, I think it looks really nice. The shimmers are to die for. They really are this chunky gloriousness. Some of them are softer, which is really cool because if you're into a softer shimmer, you can get that. But I also like the range. Like, I love having a lighter shimmer in my palettes. And a lot of times I will rag on a color story when it's like, but I want a light shimmer, especially with people with hooded eyes. I think it looks really good and very complimentary when you get a lighter shimmer on the eye, because then it kind of highlights what you don't have, which is a lot of lid space. And so I think people like kind of forget that when they curate things, and I always get really disappointed because I want to reach for a lighter shimmer. So when you have a lighter shimmer but also like a darker shimmer, So good. Some of these are like duochrome deliciousness. They're literally delicious. So look, duochrome, but on the softer side. Now you want a chunky shimmer, they'll also give you chunky ass shimmer. So look at this. Duochrome reflective. This I think is the one that I'm wearing right now on my eyes. This red one is like this chunky, great, like super pigmented. Oh, no, look at that. It's so nice. All of these are so great. Did I swatch this one? No, I didn't. I love this one too. I was wearing this one a lot. It has a lot of different tones in it that are just very beautiful. Like greeny to purpley. Let me just get a purple. This one is like one of the softer, not so chunky shimmers, so it's more like everyday. Some people don't really like a super chunky shimmer. I mean, they can be difficult to work with, and it might not be something that you like to reach for, you know, when you're going to work or whatever. And I think for me, I think about that when I'm thinking about palettes, is like, are you gonna wear this to work, or are you just gonna wear this to play around with makeup and then not let anybody see you? And so my palettes that I can wear to work rank a little bit higher, but also they're super fun. So this one is like a duochrome, is this like brown to purple, I guess, is kind of what it is. Did you guys see that? Holy smokes. So gorgeous. The duochromes, the duochromes in here are so good. But if you guys want to just like your plain Jane, just straight up, nice, soft, white, kind of champagne-y shimmer, you also get that. It's just overall super fun color story, also an everyday one, super good variety. Mattes are really good quality. That is why it is my #1. I kept reaching for this sucker. I had to stop and put it down and test some other palettes because I just kept reaching for this one. But that is my ranking of the last 15 palettes that I have tried recently. I hope you guys enjoyed. I would love to hear in the comments whether or not you've tried some of these. If you like ranking videos, please check out my channel and my ranking video playlist. I am out of here, you guys, and I will catch you all in my next video. Bye.